That sound, the roar of a crowd, the flash of a medal, it really captures that feeling, doesn't it? A nation's dream.
It absolutely does.
And just recently, July 1st, 2025, I remember the time exactly, 6:04 p.m. IST, some huge news dropped.
Yeah, game-changing news, really.
The Union Cabinet, meeting in New Delhi, Prime Minister Modi chairing, they approved this landmark national sports policy. Ashwini Vaishnaw, the union minister, made the announcement.
And it feels like more than just policy. It's a blueprint, a strategic shift for Indian sports.
A blueprint. I like that. So that's our mission today on the deep dive. We're going to, really get into this policy. What's the ambition here?
The big goal seems to be transforming India into a genuine global contender in sports.
And even hosting the big one, the 2036 Olympics.
That's definitely part of the vision, a serious aspiration.
But it's broader too, right? Not just about elite athletes. What does it mean for, well, everyone? Young kids starting out, fans, maybe even just folks wanting a healthier lifestyle.
Exactly. It seems to aim for empowerment across the board, using sport as a vehicle. It's quite a vision.
Okay, so let's unpack it. First off, why now? There was a policy from 2001.
Right. And you think back to 2001, India was, well, a different place. The population's exploded past 1.4 billion since then.
Technology, sports science, everything's moved on so much.
Precisely. That 2001 framework, it just wasn't equipped for today's complexities, today's potential. It needed a complete overhaul, really.
Makes sense. You need something built for 2025 and beyond. So this new policy, it rests on 5 pillars, is that right? Kind of the foundation for everything.
That's the structure, yes. 5 core pillars, each tackling a different crucial piece of the puzzle for a sort of holistic change.
All right, let's take the first one. Pillar 1. Excellence on the global stage. Sounds ambitious.
It is. This is about moving beyond just participating. It's about actually winning consistently.
So how do they plan to do that? Is it just more funding?
Funding is part of it. We'll get to that. But this pillar is more strategic. It's about building a clear pathway. Think competitive leagues for regular high-level play.
Okay.
And crucially, world-class infrastructure. Not just in the big cities, but in rural areas too. That's a big emphasis.
Right, reaching talent everywhere.
Exactly. Plus, robust systems, for training, coaching, proper athlete support, identifying talent early and really nurturing it, no more relying just on chance discoveries or individual genius.
A proper pipeline, then. Okay, pillar 2 sounds intriguing. Sports for economic development. How does that work? Sports making money.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting, I think. It's looking at sports as an actual industry, a driver for economic growth.
Like sports tourism.
That's a big part of it.
Yeah.
Promoting India as a destination for sports events, attracting major international competitions, and yes, the economic boost if they manage to host the 2036 Olympics would be massive.
You'd imagine so. Jobs, infrastructure.
And also strengthening India's own sports manufacturing. Encouraging startups in the sports tech space, getting the private sector involved through PPPs, public-private partnerships, and CSR.
CSR, corporate social responsibility.
Okay, so yeah, it's about tuning sports into an economic engine, not just a pastime.
Right. Okay, pillar 3, sports for social development. This sounds like using sports for, well, societal good.
Precisely. This is about harnessing the power of sport for social inclusion, making sure everyone gets a chance to play.
Who are they focusing on specifically?
The policy highlights boosting participation among women, people from economically weaker sections, tribal communities, and persons with disabilities. It's quite broad.
So using sports to tackle inequality.
Essentially, yes. Promoting gender equality, maybe even helping to reduce social tensions, and definitely improving public health overall. It's using sports as a kind of social glue, almost.
Interesting. Pillar 4, sports as people's movement. This sounds like getting everyone involved.
That's the idea, making sports normal, part of everyday life, like chai and samosas, as the outline put it.
Huh. So pushing for mass participation.
Absolutely. In schools, in communities, right down to the grassroots level. Just getting people moving, engaging with sports, building that culture of physical activity across the nation.
A call to action, basically. Get off the couch.
So I like that.
And the last one, pillar 5, integration with education. This feels really important for the long term.
It's critical. And it ties directly into the National Education Policy, the NEP 2020.
How so?
It aims to properly embed sports into the school curriculum. Not just PE class as an afterthought, but making it integral.
So kids get exposure early.
Exactly. giving students real opportunities to discover sports, find their talents. You think about how stars like, say, Sachin Tendulkar or PV Sindhu started young. This is about making sure the system helps find and develop the next generation so potential isn't missed.
Systemic talent development makes sense. Now, you mentioned this wasn't just cooked up in a back room. There's a lot of consultation.
That's a really key point, actually.
Mm.
It has a lot of weight to it. They gathered input from, well, pretty much everyone involved.
Like who?
Central ministries, NTI-IOG, the government's main policy think tank state governments, the national sports federations, athletes themselves, experts, even the general public had a say.
So a broad base of input, that should help with buy-in, you'd think.
You'd hope so. It suggests the policy tries to reflect needs from the ground up, not just a top-down directive.
Okay, so that's the grand plan. 5 pillars, broad consultation. What are the hopes here? What does success look like? The dream scenario.
Well, the dream is pretty big. Definitely a major jump in medals at the Olympics. Asian Games, Commonwealth Games becoming a real force.
And pulling off the 2036 Olympics hosting bid.
That's a huge marker of success they're aiming for. But also, beyond the medals, fostering a genuinely healthier, more active population through that mass participation push.
Right, the people's movement.
And significant economic benefits, too. Sports tourism booming, new infrastructure, more jobs, especially with private sector involvement picking up.
It sounds fantastic on paper, but, implementing something this massive in India, there are always challenges. Let's do the reality check.
Absolutely essential. And Indian sports, let's be honest, has faced some deep-rooted issues. This policy doesn't operate in a vacuum.
Okay, where do we start? Funding always seems to be an issue.
It's a major one. Underfunding is a persistent problem. That 2023 budget figure Rs 3,397 crore sounds like a lot, but break it down per person.
It was about Rs 24 per person annually.
Yeah, roughly. Now, compare that to the UK, nearly Rs 5,000 per person.
Here.
It's a completely different league of investment.
Wow, that really puts it in perspective. How can you build world-class infrastructure and support systems with that kind of gap?
It's a massive hurdle. You look at China's results after they poured money into sports infrastructure. It shows what serious investment can do. We're just not there yet, financially speaking.
Okay, so funding's a big one. What else? You mentioned deep-rooted issues. Governance.
Oh, definitely. Governance issues have been a recurring theme. There's often been a lack of standardized sports laws across the country.
Leading to?
Regulatory bodies that can be opaque, not always accountable.
Yeah.
And then there's the issue of sort of overlapping policies.
Like different schemes doing similar things.
Exactly. You have things like the Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan in education and the Fit India movement, both promoting activity. But sometimes it leads to confusion on the ground, inefficiency, instead of coordinated action.
Right, wires getting crossed. And sadly, we have to talk about sexual harassment. That's come up quite starkly recently.
It's a deeply disturbing issue, and it needs confronting head-on. The numbers are concerning those 35 complaints to the Sports Authority of India, SAI, between 2010 and 2020.
And 29 were against coaches, right?
Yes, and the revelation that the Wrestling Federation, WFI, didn't even have a mandatory internal complaints committee. It's just unacceptable. It undermines athlete safety and trust completely.
Absolutely. Then there's the shadow of corruption. Has that hampered things?
It certainly has in the past. We've seen scandals, like around the Women's Hockey World Cup bid, I believe, and the big one, the Indian Olympic Association getting suspended by the IOC back in 2012.
Why was that?
Financial irregularities and governance issues were cited. Things like that really damage India's reputation and, drain resources and energy.
And another challenge on the integrity front, drug use.
Yes, doping. India's ranking isn't great there. Third globally in anti-doping rule violations in 2019, according to that WOD report, 152 violations.
That's a significant number. It directly undermines that goal of excellence on the global stage.
It absolutely does. It tarnishes victories and questions the whole system. Needs constant vigilance and education.
And for a country so diverse, there's often criticism about which sports get the attention, the neglect of other sports.
That's a very valid point. Cricket's dominance is undeniable, culturally and financially. Which means many traditional Indian sports like Kho-Kho, Kabaddi, even others with Olympic potential, often struggle for funding, media attention, decent facilities. It's an imbalance.
You mentioned global comparisons earlier, like Jamaica focusing on sprinting.
Right. Jamaica's a small nation, but look at their focused success. India, with its vastness, needs to figure out how to nurture excellence across a wider range of sports, including its indigenous ones, not just pour everything into one or two.
Okay, one more crucial point. This ties back to governance, I suppose. Autonomy. PT Usha raised a concern.
Yes, the IOA president, PT Usha. She voiced concerns about a draft national sports governance bill, suggesting that too much government oversight, well, it could conflict with IOC rules.
The International Olympic Committee wants sporting bodies to be independent, right?
Exactly. They're very strict about government interference. The fear is, if the government gets too involved in the running of federations, even with good intentions like ensuring accountability, it could risk another suspension from the IOC, like in 2012.
So it's a really fine line to walk ensuring good governance without compromising that essential autonomy required internationally.
It's a very delicate balancing act indeed.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, this National Sports Policy 2025, it's undeniably bold. Ambitious goals, an inclusive vision, potentially transformative.
The potential is definitely there. The 5 pillars cover a lot of ground. The consultation process was wide. It could be the blueprint India needs.
But as we've discussed, the road ahead is, well, it's steep, full of hurdles.
Implementation is everything. That vision needs consistent, serious funding, more than Rs 24 per person. It needs solutions to those governance issues, tackling corruption and harassment head-on, and finding that sweet spot between oversight and autonomy.
It really feels like, as the saying goes, this isn't a sprint, it's a marathon.
Absolutely. A long-term commitment is required.
So the final thought for you, our listeners, to chew on. The policy is on paper, the ambition is clear. But what will it really take on the ground year after year to make this vision a reality? For every single aspiring athlete, no matter where they live, to actually feel the impact.
And maybe also, what role do ordinary citizens play? If this is meant to be a people's movement for sports, what does that look like for you? How do we all contribute to building that culture?
Something to think about. We'll leave it there for this deep dive.